Hello. So I'm pivoting from Perceptor, a startup I've been working on for the past year and a half. And here's a technical deep dive about everything I did so that you can learn and maybe you can implement it at some point in your life. So what is Perceptor? Perceptor is a tool that watches your users who are using your website and tells you exactly what's going on. We're utilizing the session replay and we analyze that data so you can find problems and issues and before the user screen. That was the hypothesis. So let's dig deep into it. So to start off, in general, the session replay is a very old, not that old, but it's a very known technology. And what I realized is it's all based on one emphasis, and which is the DOM itself. So what is a DOM? So here, for example, we have, let's take a very known website, which is Google, sorry. And Google in general has the DOM. This is the DOM. At the end of the day, this is just HTML and CSS. And the funny part about this is if you just copy that and paste it in a different like web browser or something, it will automatically be able to replicate that same behavior. So that's the emphasis of that. And the second part, which is, let's say, the human behavior itself, which is the mouse moving like this, or typing something, or doing anything, pressing a button, all of that is just a matter of events that gets fired. So someone needs to listen to these events. And if you combine that huge DOM with these events, and we have the console here, which tells you what's actually happening. For example, like we have here an error, which I think from a browser extension. And the network logs, which is the network that the data that gets fired. So for here, for example, this data gets fired to the Google server, which says like the query is DSWE, which is something I wrote randomly. So if you were able to catch all of this, this is how you get a session replay. And for context, here's an example. This is Microsoft Clarity. It's a very known website which is free with Microsoft. So you can see here, like I have 26 unique users, and apart from this, let's take a look at the recordings. You can see from here, this is sort of a video. Someone opened the website and then closed it. Let's take a longer session. I think 18 seconds is good. So it has 2 clicks, 1 page, and a user. So he's going through the website, what I'm doing and what I'm seeing. What you see here, that's the magic. Like what you see here, it seems as if it's a video. You can control it and do like all of that, but that's the tricky part. This is just, if we go to the website, this is just the DOM mimicking what's actually happened with the series of events. So this matches exactly what the user did with the website, like scrolling through it. That's the genius of it. It's very lightweight, it's very easy to deal with, but, and a big but, it's not a video. So the thing is, these extensions have always been there for a long time, and they have everything related to the product itself, whether like what the users are doing, were they frustrated, were they happy. If you have a combination of these with the console logs and the network request, you could be able to do whatever you want with it. You could be able to debug. If it's like a bug that caused the user to leave, you can find exactly what was the reason behind this. If it is, let's say for example, you want to understand like if the this feature is being used and utilized by the user, you can do that using these data, this goldmine. And you don't have to do like events and all of that. And like if you decided to track an event, you can do that because you already have the data and it's recorded. So that was the beauty of it. That's Perceptor in general. Perceptor is that tool that does that. So that takes us to the tricky side. The tricky side about this is, so I have here like this website, which is pretty much like I'm not like focusing on it that much. And if you take a look at the website, you will be able to see that I had at least 300 users, and 300 users just for something that I'm not even like trying to promote, trying to work on anything. It's just like a sort of a CV for me. That means if I tried to promote, I could get a long and a lot of data about like these recordings, and this is very heavy. So how can you as a startup handle all of these data and be able to digest it and make sure that it works such that it doesn't cost you that much? So let's start off by the secret, which is something I did, and hopefully you learn from what I did there, which is the first thing that you do is you don't ever try to build something from the ground up without having to see what has already been built. So let's say, for example, what I did is like I tried to look for open source session recording, session replay, and you can see here that we have a lot of open replay sessions, a lot of session replays repos, and that's where things get exciting. And after a lot of research, I realized that RRWeb, actually, they have a website now. RRWeb, this repo has the secret sauce to everything related to session replays on web. It is the powerhouse behind most of the session replays that PostHog, Mixpanel, I think, what else? I think Hotjar and Microsoft Clarity did everything themselves. But apart from these guys, most probably this is like what powers up. Like you can see here, like actually like PostHog is a sponsor. And so what I did logically, because PostHog is an open source, what I did is like I tried to find, like I realized that PostHog is an open source, so I went to their GitHub and I started to study like what they're doing. I tried to look for the repo, so this is actually the PostHog repo, and I tried to understand how they handle session replays. That's where I started to study and try to understand, so that I could save a lot of time instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. And I think that if like you have to work smart, not hard. I'm not saying that you should copy this, but you should get an idea of what they were working on. So if you ever build any product, this is the first thing that you think about. Don't just jump into implementing it, or like go jump to Claude and please build me this. You have to see what's going on. So I realized that this is the RRWeb, and I found like some cool ideas that PostHog was doing. So the next logical step was like to understand how like what's like RRWeb and what's it's built on, and that takes us to like what I've been like talking about, which is the events. So as I said, we have like an event that takes a snapshot of the whole DOM, which is the most important part. So this is like the snapshot that it's like the background image that you can use to see what the users are doing with your product from. And then with the events, it becomes a video. It replicates a video. And that's like the cool part. So here we have a sort of, we could say this is RRWeb that has some sort of events. This is like snapshot, and it's called mutation events, and we have the network, and we have the console logs. This is it from the high view. This is how the RRWeb saves us a lot of time because it already does the heavy work. And to give you like context, it's a matter of having some sort of event listeners and utilizing the browsers to be able to access like the DOM and just listen on the events. That's literally it. That's the magic. So we have all of these events. What happens is we want to create them in a sort of, let's say, let's take it like this, a sort of a JSON. So that JSON is something like this, event, and it's going to be something like one means snapshot or something like that, and then the data, and the data is going to be something like so we have a website. As I said, we have a website. It's going to be something like, let's pick something small. Yeah, so it's going to be something like this. And so if we do it like this, 3, blah blah blah, 1, 2, 3, and the dots means like the whole DOM. So it has like the HTML, and most importantly the timestamp. When did it happen? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and yeah, like, so it's a JSON which has like the events, and it's sort of an array, and you can just have many events as much as you want. And that's where like you start to stream like this JSON. Like you can, like, this is like RRWeb just emit an event. This is where like the cool part like start happening. So I decided to yeah, sorry, one thing is, because of the timestamp, you'll be able to identify the events in chronological order. This is the key point. If you replay that events in the same sequence that they were recorded in, it will create nearly exactly the same behavior that the user did. So if we go here to what I did, which is something very simple, which is I understood what RRWeb is doing, I understood how PostHog did it, and so I started to create an web SDK, because at the end of the day you have to install some sort of an SDK to be able to record. And this, where things might seem familiar, you start to download a package, which is like, if you go to PostHog or any tool that you're trying to integrate with, they should have some sort of a package. Since it's a web, so it's an npm package. So that takes us to, like, as I said, like Perceptor. In it, it's just a very simple 2 lines of code. But the worst part is, from the business aspect, is it's very hard to convince people to just download and try your thing without having some sort of a proof or something like that. So it was a chicken and egg problem. But you can see here it's very familiar to any analytics. If you have tried to set up analytics before, it's very familiar to it. And if you start to go deeper into it, you'll find that, where is it? I think, yeah. So yeah, actually I've built an extension here that is very specific to demoing. When I was trying to demo with clients, this is the extension, but this can be a video for later. It was I actually vibe coded it. But in general, you can start to see here that if you start like to understand like what I've been saying, you can see here this one is responsible for the network, this one is responsible for like the recording, and this is the events buffer, which is if you start the dots starts to connect, this is the one responsible for these events. And that's where it becomes very handy, because I've studied what PostHog were doing, And they've been like one of the things that got me interested, because like as I said, RRWeb is just a matter of stream of events. So they started to batch it in process, and if it reached a max threshold of 1 megabyte, they send that as a network request, or it's a time, like it has to be this or that. And that's where like I started to understand what they like, why they did it like that, because otherwise it will overwhelm your backend. So you send the events across, and that's exactly what this SDK is doing. You can see here that it flush the events if it reach a certain threshold, which you can control, and then it's just send it to the server, which is just an environment variable, or you can I think it's even like here I said like yeah, I think it's I think it's a variable that I control, if I recall correctly. So the session recorder is just, this is the one that does all the heavy lifting, and all thanks to RRWeb. So simply what they do is very, very simple, which is the record. I think this is the record. I think it's down here. So you can just, what it does is it just does all the heavy lifting of recording, like recording the event and send it to the event buffer, and it does all of the heavy lifting. As we said, like this is like the type, events type, as we said, like there is the snapshot, there is the mutation, and these are like very specific to RRWeb. We can like, this is just very, very specific to RRWeb, but the concept is the same. So that takes us to what actually happening in the backend. So it's a matter of an SDK that just records events and then send it in batches to the backend. Nothing fancy. But actually, this is the first approach that I did, which is, this is the Perceptor SDK. Sends the data, the events, as we said, in JSON batches. But the thing is, I even took it further and I started to do it as pre-signed URL. And if you don't know a pre-signed URL, so instead of sending all of these data to the backend, and then the backend uploads all of these data to a storage, this is a blob store, which is S3. So the backend, what it does is it creates a pre-signed URL, which is a URL that has a very specific expiration. And it's a very, very in a very controlled environment. It gives that URL to the client side, and the client side does the heavy lifting of the uploading. So you don't have to overwhelm your backend, because if multiple clients did that at the same time, you might find yourself that the backend's crashing and it's doing something that's redundant. So this is the first part. The Perceptor SDK pushes this JSON batch into an S3. And at the same time, we have two mechanisms in order to trigger the analysis of a session. It's either the SDK says, I finished this session, and gives it the ID. You can find here that this is 100, this is the same ID. So this is how they communicate, like the backend understand that the session that got pre-signed URL is ready now to be processed. Or the backend has a very sort of a naive way, which is it does some sort of a pulling every 30 seconds or every minute, and to see if there is a session that got requested to upload and it hasn't got any updates in the past 5 minutes or something like that. If that's the case, it will trigger the analysis, even though if it took way longer. So we have the backend itself. It's just a monolith, nothing fancy at all, a VPS, where it takes the batches, it cleans them up using the chronological order that we talked about, and it creates an events.json. And then we take it a little bit further and we just compress it using gzip. And then we upload the gzip into the blob store. That's literally it. This is how you can create something that's very fast, because the gzip is a life hack. So that like at any point in life you want that events.json, And this will come very handy when we like do it in the front end, because the front end, as I said here, it doesn't show you an actual video. It shows you the DOM. So that will come very handy. And then that's where things starts. Like, this is the naivest approach. So that's why I said it's naive, because I used ffmpeg to convert that events.gzip to an actual video. How did I do that? RRWeb has an open source CLI which converts, I think it's called RR video. So it converts that events.json to a video using ffmpeg. But what I realized with ffmpeg, it's a RAM and memory slayer. It destroys your RAM and memory. Like, the numbers were going to 99%, and sometimes like it stays for that for minutes. And like the metrics and like the observability I had on that screams, and like I get emails that the CPU passed 80% for a long time, and I used to say like, why is this happening? But nothing crashes, like it works. And then I started to understand like this is the ffmpeg. And then after that video is converted, I naively upload that to an LLM to analyze using a harness which I built around it. We can speak about that maybe in the next video or something, but it's something very simple. It has some tools and it has some sort of a prompt, and that prompt gets built up using like what based on the company that's like, for example, let's say I am onboarding like Abe Solomon, so I understand the context about it, what matters and what we should look for, what kind of priority they have, and that's how I used to onboard clients and understand like the specific use case, and that's how like I create some sort of a harness tailored for that, and it starts to analyze, and then there is some sort of a pipeline after that, which is very simple. The analyze data, I use LangGraph and LangChain to like get the data out, and then it goes through another pipeline, a very simple model here to save costs, where it starts to see, did we see this issue before? We have some sort of a tool which looks through the database and see if there is something semantically similar to this issue. If it's there, then we classify it under that. If it's not, then we create a new issue and decide like its category. And based on like the priority of that issue, is it a big issue, is it not, we start to ping the users through Slack, email, whatever their preferred preference. But the thing is, why this is a naive approach? It works, but it's not scalable at all. And most importantly, the cost was drastic. One session is around $0.3. You would tell me, okay, that's great. It's not that big for like a session that's 2 to 3 minutes long. But the thing is, and that's what I said in the beginning of the video, this is a very like strange market, because at the very beginning you have to be very scalable. So a very simple client I spoke with had at least, and he's even B2B, like he's not that like has that much of a traffic. They used to have at least 10,000 sessions per client. So like the average is 10,000 sessions per client, and that alone is around $3,000 in cost. AI cost only. I'm not speaking about storage, analysis, anything else. So imagine like how much should I charge a user? So that is not scalable at all. So that took us to the next approach that I did, which is I started to take it until like the way for like gzip, but instead of ffmpeg, I started to do some sort of clever algorithms, which is very simple. Since we have that events.json and it's very deterministic, we can create some sort of script or some sort of algorithm that understands RRWeb specifically and tries to analyze it. So I started to see like what's the difference between the last click, between the clicks. Did they stay on the same page for a long time? Is there some sort of a rage click? Rage click is clicking on the same element multiple times in a very short span of time. Dead clicks, did they try to click something but no event was triggered? All of these are just algorithms has been always been there. And if you can go to clarity, you can find, I think here in the dashboard, it's the dead clicks, the reach clicks, excessive scrolling, all of that, and that's how they create the heat map. This is their secret sauce. It's not that fancy. It's pretty simple algorithms. So you can see what I did is something very simple. If I did some sort of a health score calculation, I don't recall the exact logic, but if it's less than 0.5%, from a 1, like from 0 to 1, if it's less than 0.5, this means that it needs to get analyzed. So we flag that it needs to, the AI needs to do some sort of an analysis. Other than that, we will consider it a good session, not worth that, the analysis. So we translate. What we did is, through the algorithm, since we're already going through the RRWeb events, we translate it into a human-readable format, some sort of a text, so that we save context on the AI as well. And then this part took me a while, but this was like the secret sauce that got me great results that even surpasses the video. And which is, I used Playwright to, there is some sort of, like, since I said like there is a way to replay that video, like that RRWeb events as a video. So what I did is, like, I did that. I created some sort of a canvas, an HTML canvas, and attached that RRWeb to like RRWeb events to that canvas, and I just used Playwright. If you don't know Playwright, that's a very famous end-to-end testing platform, but it can take screenshots. And I used to take 6 to 8 screenshots on average, and this, with the human readable format, gets sent to the LLM. That's it. And the same classifying issue and all of that. And that made it way more scalable. First of all, like, the cost went down for like the AI analysis from 0.3 to 0.01. And of course, like, all of the events, all of the sessions are not triggered, so that by itself make it more, even less cheap, and that can give us like the ability to charge users for like around 200 to 300 per month, which matches the cost of like the current players. And but we're in a very different category because like we're AI native focused. But at the end, there is always a trade-off, and that's like software engineering in general. There is always a trade-off, and the trade-off here is, of course, you might miss some important events, some information. I tried to do some clever engineering around it, but at the end of the day, if you compare it to video, of course, video has everything in it. But this, we try to work around it because like cost is very important here, and it always depends on your use case. So there was another way to do this, which using Cloud Run and Lambda, but again, as I said, it always comes back to trade-offs. And as a startup, as a small startup, someone like me, I'm a single person, I didn't even hire anyone, I'm still solo. So the VPS costs a very fixed cost, which is around $30 per month, and I control it 100%. And it can process a lot. I did a stress test on it, and it could process around 100,000 sessions per hour. That's pretty good for an MVP. And that's a lesson for software engineering in general. You don't have to look into like the next 10 years. As you can see, I'm closing the company. I'm leaving the company because I wasn't able to get like clients as I thought I would. So if I thought about scale and all of that, I would have wasted a lot of engineering time and a lot of effort, and it was all for nothing. But it made sense as a VPS that it could take me for the next 1 or 2 years, and then maybe I thought about scalability and blah blah blah. But for now, I just wanted something that's easy to set up and work with. On the other hand, Cloud Run, which is like a Lambda function, it's a serverless. I can speak about it if that's interesting. Doesn't have a fixed cost. It's, sorry, I think I said it's fixed. I think it's variable cost. The cost varies, depends on how much it gets triggered. So if we say let's create one Lambda function per session. So let's say the user got spammed or got some sort of high traffic or something like that, you will pay the price. If they got like unexpectedly 100,000 sessions, you pay the price, and it's costly. So it's something that will never have a fixed cost. It always grows with you. But on the other hand, it can scale infinitely. And I think it's a little bit of an intermediate to set up, because there has to be some sort of a queue, some sort of a job, like some sort of way of communication to see where we at. And I just wanted, because like I'm a solo founder, I do everything by myself. I go speak to the customers, I try to find leads, and I work and I do engineering. So it made sense that I find the easiest way to reach the desired goal without having to do this. So Perceptor used to look like this. Is the dashboard. You can see here, this is like the sessions that get analyzed. This is the aggregation pipeline and how they're getting categorized based on like the critical bug, is the usability issue, performance issue, enhancement. And you can see here, these are like the sessions. This one failed, this one is being uploaded. And if you could take a look at this is like from it, this has no issue. And this is a video, but this is not a video. This is RRWeb event. It uses gzip, create it, you pull it, and it just seems like an event. It seems like a video, but that's the magic. That's why you get fantasized with like what PostHog or like any analytics are doing, but under the hood, it's just a DOM that gets replayed, and there is nothing fancy with it. And this is like the integration if you wanted like to integrate. And yeah, so this was Perceptor, and I think I'll leave the repos. As I said, like now it's getting open sourced. Maybe I just need some sort of cleanup, but I haven't done that yet, because like it was very specific to like AWS and OpenAI, I think, and Gemini. So I mean, maybe I wanted to make them more generic, but I don't know if I'll do that or not. But anyway, everything will be open source, so you can take a look. You can even run it yourself. You can run it through your organization. It will fill me with joy. And I hope you learned something from this, and see you in the next video.